all set?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year, first of all.
Happy New Year.
So nice to see you all here. And I'm delighted to welcome back Brad Taylor for what we realized to our surprise earlier this afternoon when we were talking is his 13th book and his 13th consecutive event at the Poison Pen. So thank you all for making that possible. Well, we felt a little better when we recognized, and maybe some of you remember, that he did do 2 books a year for a little while.
Right.
So it has
She
to
initially
actually-
thought, has it been 13 years?
what happened? So, but fortunately, you had the good sense to pull back and only come. And the reason I say that is that Brad would come in January when it was either raining or decent like tonight, and then he would come back at the end of June,
Right.
which was like this horrible.
Services.
So I have asked him if in fact Phoenix in June was the reason that he decided only to do 1 book a year in January. And I think you said yes.
Yeah, it's much better than June.
Smart man.
Exactly. So this is book Lucky 13.
Yes.
And you have, as a result, introduced a really fascinating young character who, by coincidence, or even design, is age 13.
Yes, that was coincidence. I didn't realize that even until today you mentioned it. I was like, no, that's true. I can take credit for it. That was by design.
I can't believe you said that. There were 13s on the table and you didn't even notice?
No, I mean, I don't keep track of which book it is. I'd have to count it on my fingers. So
Okay.
when I made her 13, it was because she was 13.
Well, she's a charming character, but let's go back a little bit. You want to just refresh for people who may not have met you before what your professional background was before you retired and decided to write these fabulous books?
I served in the military for just about 22 years, most of that time in Special Forces. And then I wrote a book, and it sold. So I retired from the military.
You know, that's a really condensed and simple
Basically,
Can we get any simpler?
that's the story. That's what happened.
It's not that easy, Brad, for heaven's sake. Wasn't there a certain amount, come on, there must have been a certain amount of excitement and even trepidation when you made this career change. It couldn't have been that
Oh,
easy.
sure. Well, I mean, I had come out on the bird colonel list for promotion. My next assignment was in Pakistan, 2 years unaccompanied. My daughter was starting high school. I had gone to the Citadel just as a break between deployments, and the book sold. So I had to make a decision. And I decided I turned down the promotion, stayed in Charleston, and became a writer.
And what was the promotion going to be?
Colonel.
You were going to be a full colonel
Full colonel.
in special operations,
Yes.
sometimes known as Delta Force.
Yeah, well, that's a nickname for a unit.
Oh, okay. Is that, no, seriously, I don't really know. Is it just part of special operations? My military history is,
Special Forces is a branch of the military, of the United States
Okay.
Army. So there's a lot of different guys. So I'd be branch Special Forces, but Special Forces Operational Attachment Delta is a unit in the military.
I understand. Is that like the SEALs are a unit in the Navy?
The SEALs would be a branch in the Navy. They're all SEALs. So Special Forces guys, there's 5 different Special Forces groups. The unit is completely different from all this. It's not in the same ballpark. People think, when they see Chuck Norris, they think they understand what you're looking at, but the unit is wildly, it's just different.
Not really, no. Well, one of the reasons I asked is that there are so many military or special operation thrillers being published, and I was asking Brad earlier today what qualifications he had to make his different than, say, a Tom Clancy Universe book or a Brad Thor book or a Daniel Silva book. And part of the answer is that you actually served
Well,
special
sure.
operations.
Yeah, and I'm not to say, plenty of people can write books. You don't have to be in the military to get shot to write good books. Stephen Crane comes to mind, Red Badge of Courage. He'd never served a day in his life. But in my case, I never trained to be a writer, so it certainly helped. The example I used from her today was, if I was going to write a scene about riding a bike, what would you think about? Think about what it's like to ride a bike. So when I'm writing a scene about special operations, I have a wealth of experience to fall back on, but it doesn't necessarily make me a better writer.
Well, but it makes you an authentic writer.
Sure.
Right.
You know, and I think that comes across, don't you? I think when you read Brad's books that, you know for sure that when he's writing about these things that he's drawing on his own experience and ability to execute them. And did you actually do some of these really amazingly dirty things?
Sure.
Honestly, I can't. Anything that happened to me, I'm not really allowed to.
But you're not allowed to, I'm sorry. Boy, there's a waffle answer. But still, no, I get it. Right, so anyway, here you are, and you, in this book, I think you've come up with, 3 really special things. One is the instigating incident and the young woman, the 13-year-old involved. So why don't you tell us about that? What kicks off the story?
Sure. Well, just falling back a little bit, the initial idea for the story, we were rattling sabers against North Korea, fire and fury. They were testing ballistic missiles, and everybody was going crazy over the nuclear threat that North Korea has, and rightly so. We should be worried about it. But I did serve in 1st Special Forces Group, which is also a unit. We're on Okinawa, and our wartime mission was, in fact, the South Korean Peninsula. So I have a healthy appreciation of what they're capable of, and they have 5 tons of chemical and biological munitions. They have enough chem bio to turn the entire peninsula of South Korea into smoking slag heap. And I always wondered, why don't we care about that? We're really going crazy over the nuclear stuff, but it's easier to make, easier to transfer, easier to sell. Everything about chem bio is easier than nuclear. Nuclear is really, really hard to do.
Could I interject and
Sure.
say that the chem bio would be locus South Korea, the Korean Peninsula, the nuclear could actually come here? And possibly that has something to do with it.
No, because the nuclear, to get here, the problem they have of getting a nuclear bomb here is not the bomb,
It's the delivery
it's the
system.
missile. And the missile
The ones
is,
that keep falling into the sea.
it's a hell of a lot easier to launch chemical biological weapons here.
Is it?
Yeah, because you don't need, because there's so many things that go into making a nuclear missile survive re-entry and all this other stuff that you don't have to worry about with chem bio. The nuclear missile is a very technological, complex thing to get it to blow up. Nuclear bio, you just got to spread it. Now you may not get an effective spread, but if they can get a nuclear, they can get chem bio here.
I'm really sorry I asked that question. Well, okay, all right, so there they are with this huge stockpile.
So yeah, and I just thought, wouldn't it be kind of ironic if the North Koreans sold their other WMD to get around the sanctions for the nuclear WMD? So I'm going to sell my chem bio to somebody to make money to poke the United States in the eye for the nuclear missile, and that's where it came from. And they're basically going to sell it to Bashar al-Assad. He's going to try to use it. He's going to give it to terrorists to attack us in Syria to get us to leave Syria. And the fingerprint's going to be on North Korea, so that's why North Korea's selling it, and he wants to use it. Meanwhile, get back to the long and the short of it. This girl steals an iPhone from a Syrian guy in Monaco, where they're doing the transfer, and the iPhone has got a bunch of encrypted instructions on how to get the chemical munitions. And she all of a sudden doesn't realize it, but now she's being hunted by a bunch of people who want that phone because it's got some bad information in it. And that's where
She's a young woman, she's 13 years old, and she and her brother are part of a Syrian refugee family that have ended up interestingly in Monaco, which I hadn't previously considered to be necessarily a haven for refugees. Because I thought it was all billionaires and, and yachts. But anyhow, there they are, and it's a very Dickensian thing because basically they're being run like, what was the guy in Oliver Twist, Fagin? Is that his name? I think it was Fagin. So Fagin was running the pickpocket gang in Oliver Twist, and so it's a similar thing, right?
So she's running the gang, it's her and her brother, basically.
Well, right, okay, but
She doesn't live in Monaco, she actually lives off in France at a deserted fort.
okay, but she's down to Monaco where the money is.
Right, exactly. And speaking of Monaco, I mean, I did my usual research trip, and that was the biggest. So I was going to use the casino. I've seen it in James Bond, everybody's seen it. So that casino is going to get used before I even fly. I'm going to that casino. And somehow or another I'm going to use it. So I pack a coat and tie and everything else. And we get there, and the first thing that happens at Bellboy, there's Lamborghinis and there's 911s and there's Porsches everywhere. And that Bellboy pops my bubble about everybody being billionaires and says, yeah, we rent those down the street and we rotate them every day. Nobody owns them. I'm like, you're kidding me. He said, no, it makes us look, rich. So the hotel rents them and parks them, and the next day there's a new one parked there. So then I get to the casino, and the best way to describe it, it was like Disneyland had recreated a casino for tourists. It was shabby and small, and everybody in it was in shorts and flip-flops. It was a complete letdown. There
It's
was,
like circus that last.
Right?
That's small.
yeah, there was the total size of the place is probably about the size of this room here.
Exactly.
They had 2 craps tables, 2 blackjack tables, and 2 roulette wheels, and that was it.
Can I tell you a story? When I was 15 years old, which is 1955, just to, do the math, my grandmother wanted to go to Europe, and I was the oldest grandchild, so I was assigned to go with her because she had diabetes and they didn't want her to travel by herself. So we arrived in Monaco. Now, this was when Grace, remember the whole Grace Kelly thing?
Right.
All that stuff. It was like, in theory, the height of glamour, right? So I'm there, I'm 15, and they won't, of course, let me in the casino because I'm seriously underage. So I'm bundled up in this raincoat, this enormous scarf, big sunglasses. I'm not allowed to do anything, but I'm gonna make my entrance into the casino in Monaco. So after all this preparation, off we go. We went in there, and as you say, it was small. It was there was no glamour. There was no Barbara Hutton. There was no Billy Graham. It was like, wow.
And this is decades later, so you can imagine what it.
I mean, I've never really recovered from that.
We went in there and we spent maybe 10 minutes, and I was like, I'm just gonna go cry back in my hotel room.
Right.
This is not worth
Total disillusion.
Right.
From.
So, and they had Lamborghinis and Porsches out there too, which I'm sure somebody was just renting and parking because nobody there would afford one. And you see the Lamborghinis driving around. I'm like, wow, they got Lamborghinis on the roads. Well, those are rental too. They have tours. Rent a Lamborghini and drive around. Does anybody here actually own a Lamborghini?
Or you have to have a mechanic that lives in the trunk to actually.
But that's how I found Eds. Eds factors in the book, and I wasn't going to use a casino, although I ended up using it because, damn it, I flew all the way there. I did find Eds, which is this medieval village. It looks the exact same, except now they sell artwork and perfume and stuff. But it's a really neat village because I didn't like the casino, so we left and went on France to Eds and did all the research up there. That's also how the aquarium ended up in the book too. There's got to be something in this place worth using.
Justify your expensive research. Absolutely.
So the oldest aquarium in perpetual or in continual existence, Jacques Cousteau's aquarium, it was a neat place. But we went there.
So if you want to look at the glamorous side, Peter Mayle. Do you remember Peter Mayle wrote A Year in Provence and a number of other wonderful books? He wrote about all of this from a very glamorous side, from the people who lived on the yachts in the water, and so you can get a whole different view of Monaco.
Don't get me wrong. There's a ton of Russians there, and there's a ton of Saudi Arabians there, and the most expensive house in the world is not in Monaco. It's actually in France. But if Monaco's here, you could throw a rock at it. It's a peninsula that goes out. I can't remember how much it was, but it's the most expensive house ever sold in the world. And it's this giant mansion out there on this peninsula.
But anyway, that's not figuring into our because basically
I was going to use it. That's the reason I still know it. I got all the information, wrote notes on it, and I never ended up using it. But.
So you have this little girl, or teenager actually, who and her brother can get away with the phone, and then really bad things happen after that, which we won't go into because there's lots of spoilers. But how does she interface then with your team, task force?
Pike is actually, he's sent over there when you have intelligence stuff, you never get the smoking gun. Nothing ever points you to something and says that's where the bad guy is, go get him. It's something that's an indicator. And the indication they have is that China has sold the OPM hack. A few years ago, the Chinese hacked the Office of Professional Management, Personal Management, with all our SF-86s, and I'm actually in it.
Are you?
So, yeah.
Part of the hack?
Yeah. So I got notified, blah, blah, blah. They got all your stuff. And so they think that they're selling it to North Koreans. What they're really selling is the chemical munitions. But Pike doesn't realize that at the time. So he's trying to figure out what's going on when he intersects. He's tracking, actually, a bad guy. He doesn't know that guy's a bad guy. He's following a phone that she has. He thinks the bad guy has a phone, but really the bad guy's trying to kill her, and they're in such close proximity, he's convinced he's ID'd the bad guy when in fact he's chasing the girl. He doesn't realize it.
Well, this girl is really fabulous. She adds a whole different dimension, really, to the story. And I asked Brad, and I thought I knew the answer, but he confirmed it. Was she there just to be the the instigating incident? It was necessary for her to get the phone, right? To get this whole plot underway. And then, did she just like stay and take over the book?
And that's exactly what happened. I wasn't sure what she was going to do. Either I was going to kill her, or she was going to go stage left, or she was going to run away, or something. But once Pike got the cell phone, in fact, the book was called Shadow Strike for the longest time. And then Mina, her name's Amina, she ended up taking over the whole book. And so I called my publisher and said, we got to change the title. It's different now. There's a lot more personal stakes in it. And so she ended up being the heart of the book, really.
And might return, at least in some way. I think that's a really interesting question, you know, because she's only 13. I mean, she's gonna,
Hey, years ago.
if she survives the book. That's right. If she survives the book, you know, then what kind of relationship might she have down the road with the task force? Interesting. So it might have been easier just to kill her, you know.
Right. It definitely is, because once you book, you box yourself in, you can't just hand wash it away. I mean, she does now exist, so what are you going to do? I'd start the next book off at a funeral. Black umbrellas. Solve that problem. Nobody asked me more questions.
He's pretty clinical, isn't he? Anyway, she's really. Any of you watched the reboot of Jack Ryan? Do you remember the children they were actually more interesting in lots of ways, I thought, than the main characters in the recent Jack Ryan thing.
Yeah.
And as it left it, the teenage son of the guy that's, you know, eventually blown away, he's still there, right? And
Yeah.
so I thought that it's the same dynamic, really. You know, what's going to happen to this teenager? Which way will he jump? And, you know, what kind of trauma? How will he be shaped
She
by
had
the
some
trauma?
Come on now.
Sorry?
She had a lot of trauma.
She did. No, absolutely. But I mean, I think these are all questions,
Yeah.
you know, that are valid asks.
Mhm.
Okay, so meantime, we have Pike and his main squeeze and then the general task force. So what are they up to, Jennifer?
Yeah, so they're trying to solve the problem. There was several things I found out. First of all, I had the overarching plot of, you know, that North Korea is going to sell the chemical bio to Syria. So, but I don't know where I'm going to go. I mean, where do you want to do this? You could do it anywhere. I can't get into North Korea. I'm not going to Syria, so those are out. You know, last year I got arrested in Lesotho as a spy. So this year I want to go somewhere.
Didn't want to
I'll
repeat?
be arrested in North Korea. That's probably a really bad idea.
So I'm looking at the casino in Monaco, #1. But actually, it was a story. I do a lot of research every morning. I get a bunch of feeds from all over the world, and I saw the story of 4 North Korean army officers had an accidental discharge on a Swiss rifle range and almost hit a Swiss army officer, which made the national news inside Switzerland. But for me, the story wasn't, you know, their story was, what kind of boob is running this range? My story was, what in the hell are North Koreans doing shooting on a rifle range?
Right.
So I started doing research, and there are a ton of North Koreans inside Switzerland.
For real?
Yeah, because, well, when I say a ton, there's a heck of a lot more than there are in the United States. Because they've got GSBC's is Geneva Security Cooperation thing, where they have people from Venezuela and all the other bad countries come in. North Korea's there. They have 11 slots for North Korean officers in this organization. They also have the headquarters of the UN there, which has all the North Koreans there. Kim Jong-un himself went to college in Switzerland. The family has all gone to school in Switzerland. So there's a history of them there. And it was pretty interesting to me. And so I said, you know, Switzerland's a pretty nice place. I can make that work. And so I started digging into the entire relationship of North Korea and Switzerland. And it's a pretty healthy relationship. Because the Swiss are the neutral party. In Vietnam, who did we deal with? We dealt with the Swiss, because they're the ones that talked to them. When Iran captured everybody, who did we deal with? We dealt with the Swiss. When we're talking about setting up this, the initial summit between President Trump and us, who we talk with, we're talking with the Swiss. We don't have an embassy there or anything. So they look at this neutral party thing pretty seriously, and they engage with all these other entities. And so it worked out for the book.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're classically neutral.
Right.
So, and it's a useful function, as you say.
Right. We use them all the time.
Yeah.
We're using them right now, trying to get the 2 guys in Iran right now that are arrested. It's the Swiss that are doing our bidding over there, because we don't have an embassy there.
So, is there any hangover from your actual term of service? Are you in any way want to say.
Psychopath?
No.
No.
Muzzle was the word I was going for there. Muzzle. I know that, there are some authors who, for example, worked at the CIA and whatever, who their books have to be vetted by their former
Right.
employees, and they're not at liberty to say a lot of things. Is that also true for you?
No. Every organization has a different pre-publication review process.
Right.
State Department has it, FBI has one, Department of Defense has one, CIA has one. The Department of Defense is, if I were to write anything that had to do with anything that I had experienced, say if I wrote an autobiography, or if I was going to write a history of the Iraq War, or if I was going to say this is what we should be doing in Afghanistan, because I had experience in all that all has to get reviewed. Fiction does not. I mean, where would you draw the line on that? So you'd say, I wrote Starship Troopers. Well, you better review that with science fiction. I don't care.
We have a moon force now, don't we? Or a space?
Not yet. Not yet. But so no, on this pure fiction realm, it would be impossible to, where would you draw the line on that? If I, wrote a gardening book, does that have to go in? Or who's cutting the line here? So that's where DoD did it. CIA did the other thing. CIA, if you were a clandestine officer in the National Clandestine Service and you write a book, they don't care if it's a comic book. It's getting reviewed. That's just the way they did it.
Yeah, I thought, because Francine Matthews, who's going to be here in a couple weeks, writing an historical novel, was a CIA officer, and she's had to have her books not her Jane Austen books or the historical books, obviously, but other books she's had to have reviewed, so I just was kind of curious about it. Right. So, anything else you'd like to say about this book? We don't want to give away any spoilers.
Well, the one thing I found I was doing research to Switzerland because I wanted to use the country. They have this enormous bunker system all over the country, where everything is. In World War II, they built bunkers everywhere to prevent Hitler from overrunning them. At the same time, they're dealing with Hitler, keeping his gold and things like that. Anything they can do to keep him out of the country. Well, then at the end of World War II, we had the Cold War start, and they made a law in Switzerland that every Swiss citizen has to have a position inside a bunker in case of nuclear war. So they build more bunkers. They're everywhere. And they look like, some look like sheds, some look like fake houses, some look like barns. They're all hidden. And some people actually make it a kind of a game. Let's go find all the bunkers. And they have tours that do it and all kinds of stuff. Let's go look at the bunkers. Well, after the end of the Cold War, they had a bunch of bunkers they didn't need anymore. And so they started selling them. And they sold them
like country houses or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
They sold them to some people from everything. Some guy was making cheese and using the dampness of the bunkers to keep his cheese. But other people came on, which is what I used in the book, they came on some pretty interesting ways of using it. So right now Amazon is our big cloud provider. Amazon Cloud, DoD uses Amazon Cloud, CIA uses Amazon Cloud. You wouldn't believe all the people who use Amazon Cloud. As a matter of fact, Amazon's cloud services makes more money than Amazon. That's how big their cloud service is. We just don't see it because big industry's doing it. Well, somebody over in Switzerland said, you can't get into the Amazon cloud because of their cybersecurity, but how else can you destroy the Amazon cloud? Well, I could put a bullet through the server and that's the end of your cloud. You lose all that data. I could blow it up. So the Swiss, being smart, said, we have just as much cloud computing security as they do, except ours is protected from nuclear bombs. You cannot harm anything inside this bunker. EMP strikes, that's one of the big things about DoD's cloud, is there's an EMP strike, it'll wipe out the entire cloud.
Really?
But it won't wipe out the bunkers because they've been shielded from EMP for the very reasons that the thing was designed to protect against nuclear bombs. So that was one thing. The other thing was, in 2013-ish, because it took a long time to drag out, the Swiss gave up their Swiss secrecy banking laws. It used to be if you had a numbered account, nobody would know anything about you. They would never tell you anything. So people were using that to evade taxes and a lot of other criminal stuff going on with that stuff. Finally, all these countries kept beating the Swiss up and they finally gave in and changed the law. And they said, okay, if you give us a warrant with enough proof behind it, we'll tell you everything behind this Swiss banking law. And so that, of course, then everybody's like, well, I can't smuggle my money anymore. They're going to catch me. And so the people who had the bunkers said, I'll just turn these things into giant safe deposit boxes, which is what they did. And they're outside the Swiss banking laws. So now instead of having a numbered account with currency in it, they have a bunker
A
with
bunker.
gold in it, or artwork, or things like that. And those are all over the place. And they have flight lines next to them. They'll fly you in on a Learjet. They have little chateaus you stay in. The whole thing's completely self-contained with its own water, air, everything else. And that still has the Swiss secrecy. So you could walk in there with whatever you wanted, and they'll just, say, here's the keys, walk out, you do your stuff, and you can buy one as small as, like we have a shelf, or as big as an entire bunker. And
Oh, so it's like a super safe deposit system.
exactly. And people are storing all kinds of stuff that's contraband, basically. So they're laundering their money now through artwork and other things. They're not using the Swiss banking system. But now when people say, I want to go see what's behind that guy's, he rented it, what's in there, Swiss secrecy still applies. Nope, sorry, we don't have a rule for that one. I'm not,
So now you could have some really great heist novels that they would all be
Right.
about, seriously, about,
there is, in fact,
Bruce Willis to the rescue. You know?
pretty good
Die
heist
Hard in Switzerland.
in this book. They cracked the bunker.
Oh.
So I saw those bunkers when I was over there. They have some of them are, to this day they say, if the balloon went up, which is Army talk for if we had nuclear war, they didn't think the bunkers would work. There's one of them that's so big, it's like a mini city, and scientists to this day look at it and said, everybody had cholera and they all died because there's no room in here, no fresh water or anything. But you can tour it; they'll let you in it. And they have videos of how it was supposed to work, and it's it's a 1960s looking thing, but you can go in there and look at it. It's pretty fascinating.
Cholera, boy, there's an old-fashioned result, but you're right, if the water's bad,
Right.
it'll just be
Yes,
like
so
that one fountain in London that they finally
Yeah.
tracked down was the reason for that horrible cholera epidemic. It only takes one.
Or the United counter in Chicago. Everybody got sick on the United flight because they all drank from the same fountain in Chicago.
Oh.
It wasn't cholera, but it was the same type of thing.
I missed that one.
Good.
Okay, I was getting my flu shot today at CVS, and there was some kid had the worst cough I've ever seen. At one point, he went over and drank from the public drinking fountain, and I thought, I'm really glad I'm here watching that. so I don't make the error of drinking from the public drinking fountain here because it can't be good. Right. So you obviously had a really good time writing this book.
I did. I was under crunch time, so this is basically a book every 6 months because I had my knee replaced. And so I spent, my wife will say, 4 months whining.
We talked about this last time,
Yeah.
in fact, when we went out to dinner, as we
Yeah,
always
just
do.
just
I
had
had
that.
my knee replaced, and I remember coaxing him and saying, it really makes a huge difference. But this knee, the one I'm swinging, in 2012, and it, miraculous how well it works. Just like a lousy month of rehabilitation,
well,
and
that's-
then after that, you're good.
I think I got a bad knee. It works now, but it was a lot of rehab. There was a lot of, yeah. They almost wanted me to go back in on it, so there was a lot of work I had to do to get it back to functioning.
But are you better off now than you were before you did?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, no. What they told me was no matter what, it was just going to get worse and worse and worse.
Right.
So would I have waited until it's worse and worse? Or, because you got, there's a warranty on my knee. It's only going to last so long if I got to put another one in there. So should I have waited to start? I'm still wondering about that. Because there's a lot of things they don't tell you about having a fake knee. For instance, I can never do TSA pre again. Ever. Because my knee goes off. So I have to go through the machine like this. If you go through the machine like this, you got to take everything out of your pockets. So it's irrelevant.
It's totally not true. I go through, it's way better. You don't have to take your shoes off. You can show up.
That's
love
because
it.
your knee, or that's because your age.
I knew he was going to say something.
I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying, 'cause they make me take everything off for my knee.
Even before I was 75, if you go through this I will tell you, in case you ever fly to Heathrow, okay? If you ever fly to Heathrow, in the whole enormous airport, there is exactly one scanner for people.
Wow.
It's lane 15. And they will try to bully you into every other lane because they're trying to maximize. So I have devised a system when I go to, I slip around because I'm little. I slip around underneath the arms of all the people who are trying to push you to like name 11. So I get into line because otherwise they pat you down. But if you've got, the big scanner,
Yeah, that's-
once they have at Sky Harbor, you just go through, raise your hand, and you're
Well,
done.
so now I stand in line, and there's a bunch of people, and there's a huge line ready to go somewhere, and so to speed it up, they'll unlock the magnometer and say, all right, you go in here, you have anything that's going to go off here, you just go off, you go over there. I'm the one that's got something that's going to make it go off. All right, you continue in this line. I stand
My
here
husband's had 2 shoulders and 1 hip, and he's even more bionic than I am.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. We show up and they have to unlock everything and we do our thing and it takes like no time and people meantime back there getting patted down or all going,
Well, we just came back from Brazil, and they don't have these kind of machines,
no.
and you get patted down.
They don't at Newark either.
And they also don't
It's
understand-
just Brazil.
They also don't understand
Right.
what a fake knee
And
is.
in our current government shutdown where there are TSA people calling in sick, I don't expect a good result flying to Chicago on Sunday. I'm going early.
So having to do over again, I think it's 50-50. For instance, it hurt to run on it. Now I have a knee, you're not allowed to run. So I'm not sure what the trade-off was there.
Well, sorry, we digressed into orthopedics. I was trying to encourage anybody that's on the wire to go ahead because it really improves your life, but you're obviously the other case.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't think it was, I think I should have waited. I don't think it was bad as, because I think if you wait until it's so bad you can't even walk up the stairs, then you think, wow, this is a huge improvement. Mine wasn't that bad, so it was not a huge improvement. I don't mean that in a funny way, just that's what happened.
Makes sense.
It wasn't as, it's still, it hurts at night
I'm
and
sorry.
stuff.
I had a way better result. What can I say? All right, well, progressing off orthopedics, I'm assuming that you're actually writing a 14th book.
I am, right now.
Isn't this good news?
Yes.
Okay. And that's all
Wait,
we're gonna
wait.
say?
Well, actually, this is actually the first time I've had some linkages before, but this book rolls right into the next book.
Does it?
With some of the characters. It's people of the Wagner Group from Russia, which is a real group. It's a private military corporation that's run over. It was in Ukraine, it's in Syria, it's in Cameroon. They're all over the place. They're,
Wagner is not a Russian name.
yeah, that's actually a Wagner or whatever you want to
Oh,
spell
okay.
it out. Like,
All right.
But it's named after this guy who works for Putin, and they call him Putin Chef, and he's a oligarch who used to be in the military, GRU, and now he's running amok, killing everybody, which is in this book. Well, they figured out that Pike's Growler Recovery Service is not Growler Recovery Services, and they're going to go for a little bit of vengeance.
Well, we have to wait a whole year now because of the Phoenix climate. Oh, it's terrible. Wow. Okay, so how about questions? Any of you have questions that you would like to ask Fred?
I have a question about the bunkers in Switzerland. Are they above ground?
Below ground.
They're all below ground.
The entrance is, well, it'd be like in the side of a mountain.
Okay.
So you have this chalet-looking thing, and you go through the door and you're in a bunker. You can Google it. They have slideshows, the strange bunkers of Switzerland. And they'll have all the pictures and stuff.
There was one over here.
Yeah, I just had a question. You give any thought to having like a teenage Pike Logan, some kind of prequel for how he got to be who he is?
Not so much teenage. I've done some that are pseudo prequels before the task force was formed, that kind of thing. But I've never gone back to that
I was
age.
just curious.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it really. Something to think about though.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, that like the people like Pike Logan and people who do what you do, you have a certain kind of beginning
Right.
that enables you to do that.
Yeah, it's
So,
something to think about.
No parental guidance.
Yeah, just a thought.
You got this plot idea here. Yes, John?
I've seen just about every time you've come here, and early on, you used to talk about how easy it was to do 2 books a year. And,
That was
all those
insane.
days-
What was I thinking?
And I noticed, I remember you said you had things going on and you were only gonna do one that specific year, I don't know what the first year was that you wanted to do one. And now I'm getting the idea that you think one is probably the way to go.
I actually look back on I did 2 books and 2 short stories, 2 book tours, 2 book research trips, security contracts, and actually wrote the books. I don't know how I did it. I honestly don't. I mean, I look back on that, that's crazy time. I do remember I would finish up a book, type the end, turn it in, and they would immediately say, I need a title, plot, and jacket copy for your next book. And I'm talking the next day. Until, I have a pretty fertile imagination, but after 4 years of that, I'd run out of ideas. I mean, I need to sit around and think about this for a little bit. Because once you send that stuff in, it's written in stone. I mean, you're not going to be able to change it. And I learned that early, too. Don't tell them anything, because I'll run them up and put it on digits, and once it's in digits, it's out there. And so you have to, I really want to think through how I was going to do it. and it wasn't even me that pulled off of it. I was certainly agreeing to it, but I was overrunning their sales team. They were having trouble selling the books. They were having, I was cannibalizing my hardbacks and the paperbacks, and they were going to stores every 6 months and saying, "We just bought his book." 6 months ago he came out with one. And so the sales team actually went to my editor and said, "Hey, let's go back to one book a year." We've built up a base. And at that point, I was pulling my hair out. I was actually telling my wife, "I'm not going to finish the book. We're doomed." And they called me up and said, "Hey, I know you're really enjoying this $2 a year, but we think we'll go back to one." And I was like, "Damn you." Okay. So that's how that happened. Yes, sir.
What, do you keep all of your book royalties in one of those Swiss bunkers?
I talked to my wife. She knows where all that is. She ran out today. I'd be in big trouble.
I'm sure to be filled up and you'd be looking for a sequel already.
A little bunker.
Right. A drawer.
Why don't you tell us about, because you've written some short stories, why don't you talk, we never even talked about those.
Yeah, the short stories don't follow in the linear progression of the novels. The novel starts with One Rough Man and finishes with Daughter of War. But the short stories are just ways for me to expand on the character set. For instance, the one that came out right before this, I just turned that in. It's called The Ruins, and it's actually Pike and Jennifer finding the Mayan temple that's never been on the page in between book 1 and book 2. I just now wrote that, so it goes all the way back. The Target was Aaron and Shoshana, big fan favorites. So that one's set before the 9/11 even. It's in 1998 when she gets assigned to his team, the Samson team, going down to Argentina to catch some. Argentina had Iranians blew up a synagogue down there, and they're down there trying to catch them. So that was written in 1998. And then some of them flow seamlessly into it. The one I did last year for Operator Down, The Infiltrator, was actually is right before Operator Down starts. So it's just a chance for me to write whatever I want to, and I don't really get constrained by time. People always ask me, the reason I bring that up is they're like, "How should I read these in order?" Short stories, you don't have to. They kind of bounce around so much. It doesn't matter when I wrote them. The very first one I wrote was after the Widow Strike, which is my 4th book. And it's called The Call Signs, How Knuckles Got His Call Sign, and it's set before One Rough Man. So they don't really flow with the novels.
How do you publish it? Are these all digital short stories?
Yeah, they are. They're only just because it's cost prohibitive to put out a short story you'd have to charge what you charge a paperback, and everybody would say, "I'm not paying that much for a little bitty thing." So I'm in discussions to put them all together in one book. Although The Ruins is 29,000 words. That's not a short story. I mean, that's a quarter of a novel right there.
That's a novella.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, I
But it
expect
would
it
be
to
an
come up.
interesting volume if you could,
Yeah.
collected all the collected short fiction, so to speak, would be great.
Right.
Wouldn't you
Yeah.
all like to read that?
Yeah. So I'm trying to do that right now. We're going back and forth with that.
Maybe there's a chance for another June appearance.
Maybe.
Right.
Be perfect, yeah, take it out there.
Yes, sir.
Two quick questions. Glory Recovery Services, where'd that name come from? Because that GRS, is that a common acronym? Is that?
I think I know what you're going for. I completely forgot about that acronym. There's no reason it should be the same.
Well, I just happened to hear it. I'm like, I wonder if that's where he got
No,
that from.
I never said GRS. I always said Glory Recovery Service. And then one time I typed GRS and I was like, it's the same acronym. I knew that was unintentional, completely unintentional. And it came from actually One Rough Man. There's a codex for a Mayan temple that is called Glory Codex, where this guy he read this codex and decided, here's how the Mayans all left. And it's a true story. It's really out there. The Glory Codex is. Everybody else says he's a wacko, that he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I used it for a novel, of course. But that's where the name came from. So he named it after Jennifer's uncle. And actually, if you read The Ruins, it's all right there. But that's where it came from. It was a complete coincidence that acronym has similar.
Was Gloria mentioned in the first book with the Mayan
Yes,
book? It was.
it's just a Grolier Codex, though.
Okay.
GRS doesn't come out until later on, when he named it because of that codex.
Okay. And then with your first book, did you do much research for that one as you have been with all the recent ones?
I actually, not on the ground. I used places that I'd already been to because I was still in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it opens up in Tbilisi, Georgia. I just come from Tbilisi, Georgia, so I knew it very well. I'd done a lot of operations over there, so I knew the terrain. and everywhere else I'd been to. So I did not go out and do a trip because I was still in the military at the time. So a lot of it was just based on what I knew, and I used that up basically.
Isn't it interesting how we want to apply logic and think all of this stuff is actually carefully crafted and thought out? It turns out some of it's just like dumb luck or coincidence. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't, but on the
Half
other
my
hand,
stuff is.
never underestimate the subconscious of an author. You know, you never know for sure what's bubbling along underneath there or what comes out. In a way, I mean, a lot of what you write is just sort of collective experience that kind of
Or it seems you
simmers
see,
along.
there'll be a story that I see. Well, for instance, Red Mercury, which is in this book. Red Mercury is a real thing, except it's fake. It's a myth. Terrorists believe there is such a thing called red mercury, which is a doomsday weapon. If they can get red mercury, they'll be able to kill us all. But it doesn't actually exist. And people are spending a lot of time trying to disprove the fact that there is no red mercury because people are getting killed trying to get it. When I was in Iraq, they had all the Singer sewing machines, and the latest rumor was Singer sewing machines have red mercury in them, and they stole them all, tore them apart.
Why
Trying to-
Singer sewing machines?
Just how this rumor started.
Just one of
No
those
idea.
weird things.
But currently in Africa right now, the biggest rumor right now is unexploded munitions have red mercury in them, cluster munitions and things like that. And so kids are getting blown up because they're trying to take apart cluster munitions to find this mythical red mercury. So I'd seen a story about that, and I put it in the book. So the North Koreans are calling their nerve agent, Sarin nerve agent, red mercury because they know the terrorists is like catnip to them. And they'll sell it right to them because they believe they found red mercury. And so that's all true. It's a story I saw, and it was in the back of my head, and I've known about it for years. This time I was like, yeah, they'll call it red mercury. That's cool.
So you mentioned that you get news feeds from all over. So it's part of what goes on in your subconscious. You just sort of synthesize some of this stuff. And
Yeah, just like there's.
clusters, it sticks together like.
Well, most of them are
atoms.
interesting. They're stories that interest me, not so much necessarily, war stories or things like that. The Polish gold train in Ghosts of War, I saw that story. This guy
Yeah.
claimed he'd found a train full of gold for the Nazis had hidden in this tunnel, and he was going to dig it up. And the Poles were really upset because it used to be in German terrain, now it's in Polish terrain. They didn't want it dug up because it's just going to be a mess if they have to sort out the provenance of what's down there. And it was a neat story. And so I used that for Ghosts of War. And last I heard, they're still arguing whether that thing's there. They still, government's refusing to let them dig. They're saying it's down there. Government says there's nothing down there. I don't know what's happening. Yeah.
It's unbelievable how many stories keep filtering out about World War II. I mean, every month when I go
Yeah.
through, all the vast number of reading copies and all I'm supposed to look at in order to talk to you about what's coming out, it's the percentage of yet untold stories about different facets of World War II.
But I like interspersing all that kind of
It's
stuff.
incredible.
And then not only World War II, but all the way forward, there's all kinds of stories that you can loop in there that are real.
Yeah.
The Wagner story that's in here, in Syria, they came over, they're kind of a quasi, do they work for Russia or do they not? So sometimes they work for money, sometimes they work for Russia. No doubt the Russians used them in Syria. And they teamed up with a bunch of Arabs and they said, hey, if we go over there and take these oil fields from you, we're going to get a cut of the oil. Well, that's a pure profit motive for the
Is it?
military corporation to go do that. Well, they came barreling across with all their tanks and everything. And unfortunately, they're trying to kill the Kurds, and we're there with the Kurds, and we slaughtered them. We killed upwards of 200 Russians, and it was a huge scandal because Russia said nobody got killed over there. The families at home were like, "How come all these people are coming home in caskets?" And we're saying we didn't mean to shoot any Russians. We thought it was, Assad or some other people there. So that's a real story that I put in the book, which is Taggart's history.
Okay.
So he's mad about how he was treated, and that's kind of his motivation. Well, that's a real story. I mean, it happened.
I had a couple of authors here who write various kinds of thrillers and all, but basically the tenor of their remarks has been they hope they live long enough to write about what's going on today in fiction when it might actually be fiction and not real life. The consequences of it. Mark Rainey, I remembered saying something about he thinks it's a moral imperative, to go back and look at, try to make sense out of what in the world, is going on. And I do think that there's you'll see it coming up in January. There was a long time when in crime fiction, political leaders and, you know, police chiefs and all were never fair game for being the villains. You know, you could like trust the guy if he was the chief of police. You could trust the president. David Baldacci was the first one, I think, that wrote in, what was it called? Starts with an A. Anyway, the president turned out to be a serial rapist, and you know, whatever it was, and that was his debut book.
Oh,
And
absolute power.
Absolute Power. Thank you very much. Right, I knew it was an A. Right.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that in January, for example, Greg Hurwitz's book, it's all about Orphan X killing the president, and Matthew Quirk's book is all about, is there a Russian mole in the White House? And, you know, it's creeping in already that people are now, you know, writing novels about potential, you know, stuff that's sort of floating around, but we don't have real answers to at the moment. And I find that so interesting. What will people write when it is clear what was really
Right.
going on, which we
I
can't
stay
tell.
completely out of all that, so there's not, and we had a discussion earlier, I don't do politics in my books.
I don't think, I'm not really talking about politics, I'm talking about a shift in, trust, you know, where.
I kind of disagree. I think that
Do you?
we, I even actually wrote a blog on HuffPo about this. Have I created this myth that we have a lot of secrecy that goes on with the Department of Defense and CIA and things like that, but it's secret for a reason. It's so we don't compromise people around the world.
Right.
Then you have people who write news stories, and I use that term loosely, that are just complete hogwash, and people start believing the hogwash
Right.
over what the truth is. So if somebody comes out and says, no, we're not doing that, that is not a true story, no, we're not doing that, where do they get their knowledge from? They have this Seymour Hersh article, which is no closer to the truth than acceptance. I'll give an example. I came back from Afghanistan, and he wrote an article called Search and Escape, I think it was, and it was a scathing review of the mission that I had just come from. And the only thing that was remotely accurate about that was Americans were involved and it was in Afghanistan. The rest of it was absolute BS, complete hogwash.
Yeah.
But what happens? We have Congress people saying that we're lying. I turned in an after action review and it's a lie. We want to know what really happened over there. Well, how do they get that? They get that because people write stories like I did. Am I to blame? There's a task force out there that's running around working only for the President and the Oversight Council. No oversight. Nobody knows it exists. I wrote that, I created that precisely so nobody would say I was writing about real organizations and changing the name just to do fiction. We don't have anything like a task force. It doesn't exist. We operate under the Constitution.
See,
But people read that and then they say, you know, maybe it is true. Maybe they do this. And they start believing that this other stuff's going on. I think it all came about. I think Watergate was the shedding point of it. You had 3 Days of the Condor. You had these other movies that came out. There's not a movie that comes out now. You know, Jason Bourne's got Treadstone. There's always some evil thing going on in the government. So I don't think it's anything new. I think it's been building.
Well, it probably is. I also think the whole superhero thing is in part, you know, because we all like to think there's really one out there who's gonna, you know,
Save
save
us.
civilization as we know it, rescue us and all that. So I saw an ad for Captain Marvel. It's actually a woman. Did y'all watch the football game yet? My husband watches, you know, lives for football, and it was a commercial, right? You know, and it's a girl.
Anybody rooting for Alabama?
We were neutral. It's interesting to see the orange and the red. It was sort of a color clash.
I'm from South Carolina. My cousins went to Clemson. My daughter goes to Auburn, so I don't care who
Clemson.
plays Alabama.
There you go. All right. Well, my team won. Stanford actually defeated whoever it was. So here we are. All right. Anybody have a final question before we are digressing again too far? Yes.
I'm just curious if you had any sort of difficulty or any research you had to do to write for a 13-year-old girl. Did you think back on your daughter at all?
I did actually. The difficulty, and I did have to rewrite a bunch of stuff. That
Yeah.
is a good question because when you're writing what she's doing in her head, you'll go back and read it and say that sounds like a 40-year-old man. That's not what you do. And so you had to keep going back and rewrite it. So I have 2 daughters, so I knew what they were like. But I did have to go talk to them about Snapchat and all these other things and all the social media that she knows about. And that's the reason she kept the phone. She has a phone, she wants to sell it, but it's working on this cell network. And so she's like, that's her only way to get internet. And so she's looking at YouTube and all these other things. And so I have to show me how Snapchat works and this other kind of stuff. But I did have to go back and do a lot of rewriting. It was hard to do. And You know, it's one choice is saying, she's so precocious, she's just like a man. Or go back and rewrite it. And so it was a lot of rewrites.
She's really a wonderful character. I think everybody that reads it is very attached to her, you know, and you follow her through the book with great excitement and fear. Right, because you never know for sure. Authors are so capricious. You just don't know who's going to look through a book.
Right. That's the truth. I get paid
If
for
it
that.
were a dog, on the other hand, you'd be reasonably certain that the dog would survive all the way through the book. Right?
I'll tell you this: in the ruins. So they're invading it, or they're infiltrating into a compound they set in Guatemala, a drug dealer's house, and they've got a canine patrol out there. So Pike leaps off the wall, kills the dog, stabs him in the heart, and kills the guy. The only thing I get from my editor is take the dog out. You cannot kill the dog. What are you talking about? People read that and they'll get mad. So now he knocks the dog out.
It's true. It's a real rule. You can't kill the dog or even the cat.
Or Jennifer's cat, right?
Right, exactly. The animals get to survive unto the day. But there we are. And on that cheery note, why don't we thank Brad for coming to see us for the party? And I see Susan approaching because she's the custodian of this gorgeous chocolate.